That's the way. Drive it up. Good. Good. That's good. Drive it up. Let's go. Let's keep.
They're using steroids and all the, possible side effects and coming off and all that stuff. I don't really have any of that. So I just went cold turkey. And after about 2 years...
The screen is black, sound of labored breathing, then a cough. Another one, harder. The sound becomes violent, desperate. When the image appears, we see only a bathroom, a sink, and blood. Dark red blood dripping from the mouth of a man who had just coughed up his insides. Are you enjoying this story, Dorian Yates? Then help the channel with your subscription. Look, 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you are part of that group, take the chance and subscribe now. It's free, and that way you'll keep receiving amazing stories from TV shows we still miss. Oh, and don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll find more stories like this one. This man is Dorian Yates. 6 weeks before defending his 6th Mr. Olympia title. 6 weeks before stepping on stage and being applauded like a god. And he's alone, in a bathroom, staring at his own blood and wondering if he'll survive until the competition. This is not the story bodybuilding wants to tell. This is the story Dorian Yates lived while the world applauded his muscles and closed its eyes to what was happening beneath the skin. Because underneath that armor of flesh there were failing organs. There was blood contaminated by chemicals. There was a heart working 3 times faster than normal. And there was a man paying the highest possible price for an illusion called perfection. Birmingham, England. 1983. Dorian Yates picks up his first barbell. He doesn't know it yet, but he has just signed a blood contract with a sport that will love him publicly and destroy him secretly. Over the next 14 years, Dorian will transform his body into something that defies human biology. But this transformation won't be made only of training and dedication. It will be made of needles, of pills, of synthetic hormones pumped directly into veins, and of choices no human being should have to make. In 1985, Dorian Yates takes his first injection of anabolic steroids. He's 23 years old. His body is still young, resilient, capable of recovery, but Dorian doesn't just want to grow. He wants to dominate. And in 1990s bodybuilding, dominating means pushing past every limit that nature imposed on the human body. It means injecting testosterone, deoxyribonucleic, trenbolone, growth hormone, insulin, names that sound medical, almost scientific, but are actually time bombs programmed to explode years later. Did Dorian know this? He says yes. He says he always knew there was a price. But when you're in your early 20s and your body responds like magic, when muscles explode and strength multiplies, it's easy to believe you're different, that you'll escape the consequences, that you're invincible. But nobody is invincible, and the body always collects its debt. The first invoice arrived in 1994. Dorian was training biceps. He had done this 1,000 times before. But on that day, something snapped. It wasn't a loud sound. It was an internal tear, muffled, definitive. His bicep had detached. The muscle he had built with so much pain was now literally loose inside his arm. The shape changed. Functionality compromised. Dorian didn't stop. He was weeks away from Mr. Olympia. He trained the other muscle groups, hid the injury, stepped on stage. And Juan, the audience applauded, the judges crowned him. And nobody asked what the real cost of that victory was. Nobody wanted to know how many nights he spent sleepless because of the pain, how many painkillers he took, how many cortisone injections masked the destruction that was happening. And here's the brutal truth that bodybuilding hides. Injuries aren't accidents in this sport. They're inevitabilities. Because when you lift weights no human being was designed to lift, when you train beyond the point of muscular failure, when you force tendons and ligaments to support absurd loads while your body is swollen with synthetic hormones that accelerate muscle growth but don't strengthen connective tissues at the same speed, you're not building a body, you're building a bomb. And Dorian was the most powerful bomb in the sport. In 1997, 3 weeks before his last Mr. Olympia, Dorian was training triceps at Temple Gym. The gym was empty as always. He preferred it that way. No cameras, no audience, just him, the iron, and the pain. He lowered the bar, felt the tension, and then heard the tear. This time was different. This time he knew immediately it was serious. 95% of the triceps tendon had completely detached. His arm was practically useless. Any rational person would have quit, would have sought a hospital, would have canceled the competition and started rehabilitation, but Dorian Yates wasn't rational, he was obsessed. He trained what he could, hid the dead arm under strategic angles, covered the deformity with tanning, and stepped on stage for the last time. He won by a narrow margin. Many believed he shouldn't have won, that Nasser El Sunbaiti deserved the title. But Dorian didn't care anymore. Because while he was on stage, smiling under the spotlights, his body was screaming. And he finally listened. But the visible injuries were just the tip of the iceberg. What was happening inside was much worse. 6 weeks before that last Olympia, Dorian woke up in the middle of the night with a cough. It wasn't a normal cough. It was violent, uncontrollable, and when he ran to the bathroom and coughed over the sink, he saw blood. Bright red blood, thick, terrifying. He wiped his mouth, took a deep breath, and coughed again. More blood. Dorian Yates, the man who had built the most impressive body on the planet, was literally disintegrating from the inside. He saw a doctor the next day. Blood tests revealed what he feared. His liver enzymes were elevated. His kidney enzymes were elevated. His liver was struggling to process the absurd amount of chemical substances he had injected and ingested over the past 12 years. His kidneys were working overtime, trying to filter toxins that shouldn't be there. And his body was starting to fail. The doctor was direct: "You need to stop. Now." Dorian looked at him and said, "After the Olympia." And here's the scariest part of this story. Dorian wasn't the exception. He was the rule. The difference is that he was one of the only bodybuilders in the 90s who did regular blood tests. He monitored. He knew what was happening. Most other competitors had no idea. They injected, grew, competed, and died young, never understanding why. Dorian had awareness, and even so he chose to continue. Because in elite bodybuilding, you don't just compete against other athletes. You compete against your own mortality. And almost always mortality wins. But it wasn't just the internal organs. Dorian's body was falling apart in every direction. His left shoulder had torn ligaments. Both of his thighs had suffered muscle ruptures. And then, almost comically if it weren't tragic, his stomach ruptured. Not because of a blow, not because of an accident, but as an indirect result of all the other injuries, the extreme stress, the brutal amount of food he needed to consume to maintain that mass, and the internal pressure created by the use of insulin and growth hormone that made his organs swell. His stomach literally tore. And even so, he continued. In 1987, before even becoming professional, Dorian had hip surgery to remove fascia from the joint. The problem? He never stopped squatting with absurd weights. He squatted 595 pounds, 660 pounds. Loads that crushed his hips, compressed his spine, destroyed his joints. And in 2024, almost 30 years after retirement, Dorian had to undergo total hip replacement surgery. His hip had literally been ground to dust. He now has a titanium prosthetic, and when asked if he regrets it, he hesitates. Because he knows the real answer. But he also knows that admitting regret would be admitting it was all a mistake, and he's not ready for that. People look at bodybuilders and see muscles. They see strength, they see power, but they don't see the blood clots. In 2020, Dorian was diagnosed with thrombosis, a blood clot in one of his vessels. Something that can kill in minutes if it breaks loose and travels to the heart or brain. Why? Because years of steroid use thicken the blood, increase hematocrit, make the heart work harder, and eventually blood starts clotting where it shouldn't. Dorian survived, but how many others didn't? How many bodybuilders died of heart attacks at 35, at 40, at 45? And how many of those attacks were caused by clots that formed silently while they trained, competed, and pretended they were healthy? The bodybuilding industry doesn't talk about this. It talks about dedication, about discipline, about transformation, but it doesn't talk about the funerals. It doesn't talk about the 20-somethings who start injecting steroids because they want to look like their idols and end up dead before 30. It doesn't talk about the insulin that Dorian openly admits to using and that he now says probably took decades off his life. It doesn't talk about the growth hormone that makes muscles grow, but also makes the heart grow, the liver grow, the intestines grow, until the organs become so enlarged they start to fail. Dorian Yates won 6 Mr. Olympias. He dominated the sport from 1992 to 1997. He changed bodybuilding forever. And when he retired at 36, destroyed, mutilated, bleeding from the inside, the sport applauded him and immediately forgot about him. Because bodybuilding doesn't care about what happens after. It only cares about the stage, about the muscles, about the illusion. And Dorian was left alone to deal with the consequences. And the consequences were devastating. Not just physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual. Dorian fell into a deep depression. For the first time in 14 years, he had no goal, no identity. He was the shadow. But now, without a stage, without competition, without daily pain to validate his existence, Who was he? The answer terrified him. Nobody. He admitted years later in an emotion-laden interview that he considered suicide, that he spent months locked at home, unable to go out, unable to train, unable to feel anything but emptiness. His wife filed for divorce. His children were distant, and Dorian, the invincible man, was completely broken. Today, Dorian Yates warns about the dangers of modern bodybuilding. He says current competitors are using doses 3-4 times higher than what he used. That guys who don't even compete are injecting 800 milligrams of trenbolone per week when he used 200 and already thought it was extreme. He says they're ticking time bombs, that most won't make it to 50. And when he says this, he's crucified by the community, called a hypocrite, a traitor. But Dorian doesn't care anymore, because he knows something most don't want to admit. Elite bodybuilding is suicide in slow motion, and he almost died to prove it. The screen darkens. We see Dorian today, thinner, lighter, gray hair, face marked by time and pain. He walks slowly, limping slightly because of the titanium hip. He no longer looks like the shadow. He looks like a survivor. And maybe that's exactly what he is. His voice, soft now, echoes one last time. I conquered everything, and lost almost everything. My body, my health, my family, my peace. Bodybuilding gave me fame and almost killed me. If I could go back, I don't know if I'd do it differently. But I wish someone had told me the truth nobody wants to hear. That muscles are temporary, but the consequences are eternal. The music swells. Are you enjoying this story, Dorian Yates? Then help the channel with your subscription. Look, 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you are part of that group, take the chance and subscribe now. It's free, and that way you'll keep receiving amazing stories from TV shows we still miss. Oh, and don't forget, at the end of the video you'll find more stories like this one. Images alternate between Dorian at his peak, covered in muscles, and Dorian today, aged, scarred, but alive. And the message is clear: he survived. But many don't survive. And while young people continue injecting, dreaming of stages and trophies, the industry keeps profiting and the bodies keep falling. One at a time, until there's no one left to tell the story. The screen goes to black. Silence. And then a statistic appears. In the last 2 decades, over 50 professional bodybuilders have died before age 50. Most from heart problems. Fade out. End.